Hey everybody, it's Jeff from Home RenoVision here, and I'm in my 3-season room in the middle of winter. Big surprise. It's actually quite comfortable. Couldn't believe it myself because I don't have a heat source out here, but hey. Now listen, this video is all about practical projects that you guys should be considering for doing on the outside of your house this year. It's 2021. We got COVID supply chain issues going rampant this year. It's going to be a lot like last year. Don't kid yourself. I know we're getting near the end of this thing and there's vaccines and everything else, but the point is the supply chains have been interrupted for so long, they're not going to recover in time for your project this year. So if you're planning for something outdoors, I want you to take a look at this video. We've got 4 projects that I know you can DIY yourself. We're going to have all the how-tos in there, okay? So you can get that project taken care of. We also have one project you shouldn't DIY, and that is your roof. And so we're going to go through that whole process as well so that you know who to hire. And I'm going to suggest if you're going to do roofing this year, you get on the phone right now, okay? Contractors are going to be hard to get a hold of, so get booking that project as soon as possible. So without wasting any more time, we're going to jump right into the video so that you can be prepared and organize what projects you think you can tackle effectively and start planning in advance. I know it's winter and spring's a long way away, but you have got to be 3 months in advance nowadays, or you're just going to be really disappointed getting products on site and getting the project done in a timely manner. You can't just run down the street and get what you need anymore. Everything takes so much longer to complete. Now these projects we're going to do in this following order. We're going to do a couple of projects for people who are looking to sell their house this year. Interest rates are low, markets are hot. So if you're looking to sell, a big front door project we're going to go through. We're going to show you how to parge your house. You can give a nice fresh look, okay, and make your house look really good from the curb. It's killer important. And then we're going to jump into people who are going to be renovating. I know the big DIY renovators who want to do a whole facelift on their home. You got all summer and you can do the windows and all the siding project. We're going to tackle all of that next. And then at the end, we're also going to show you what's involved with putting on a new roof. We went with an architectural shingle here, and we don't even have fresh air soffit. It's a 25-year roof. It's a great option. You don't have to go to steel, and you can still go high-end and get great value, all right? And that's what it's all about, building equity in your home. And if you don't want to sit through all of the videos, that's okay, right? We're going to have timestamps put into this video. So if you go down underneath the bottom of the video, you'll see that there's different sections, and you can click on that section with your cursor or your mouse, and you can jump straight into the information that you're looking for. It's a new feature we're doing with a lot of our longer format videos, so try to get used to it, because some of the older videos we've done, we're going to be adding timestamps to those as well, just so that we have better research tools for you guys available. My house is really not a traditional house. It's not a poured foundation. So what I've got on one side is stack stone, and somebody's done some cement work over the years, and it's in really rough shape. And on the other side, I've got stack stone that I had to add a new ledger board to. I've got it all sealed up, and we're going to be adding cement board as a facade in order to cement and parge on top of. So there's going to be 2 different approaches, a lot of information in here, and we're going to show you why your parging falls and cracks off, because no one in the market is doing it right. Stay tuned. Before I get started, I'm going to cut my Durock cement board and I'm going to install it. And we're going to show you the process for doing that, because whether it's an exterior parging job or even in your shower, it's very similar. Now, I have a 2x8 rim joist, 2x10, sorry. And I'm going to be installing a 9-inch cement board on that. The idea here is, in this situation, I'm actually going to excavate a little bit, and then we're going to build it up about 10 inches of new patio. So I'm just going to bring this down to where the new patio stone will cover. I'll get a good look. All right, so we're going to go 9 inches. I'm just going to measure down. And this stuff here just scores and snaps, right? And I'm just going to put my tape on my mark. Now, I don't have to be exact here, so I get the cheat. If I needed to be exact, then I would pull out my skill saw. I put on my cement fiber blade, and then I would run it down. But in this environment, I can just stretch out my tape and almost use it like a ruler. And that is almost perfect. And then just like drywall. All right. And then we cut it from the backside. You'll notice the board itself is actually just cement. Portland cement, basically inside a wire mesh, inside of a fiberglass mesh on each side, right? That's all there is to this stuff. And that's awesome. Now, when you're working with cement board, how do you explain this? If you've ever seen old movies with Italian gangsters and they're putting people in cement, you'll know that cement doesn't kill them, it's the acidity that does. You can actually bury someone up to their neck and they'll burn alive. just from the acidity in the concrete. So what you got to do is you got to buy the right screws. You can't be creative here. Make sure you buy something that's coated that says for cement board. This special tape, I know it's white, it's not green or blue or something that you might have in your store, but make sure it says on it that it's alkali resistant, okay? In the package of the screws comes the special drill bit that you need. Awesome, looks like a T20. Now, one way you can remember when you're working with cement board, which side you go out. Always go with the company name facing you, all right? At the end of the day, everything's about branding, and they're going to put their name on the side that they want you to see it when the job is done, so that when you take a picture and send it to your friends, you can advertise for them for free. Now, if you remember when I built this house, I have the house wrap extended past the siding so that I could get my cement board up underneath it, okay? And that's really what I'm looking for. Have a really nice continuity so that any water that builds up behind comes out over on top of it. We'll trim that back when we're done parging. Every 16 inches will be fine. And if you really like to attach screws, you can go top and bottom. This is all about making sure that it's a solid surface. And like with everything else, all of our materials from a water diversion system are hanging over top. Okay, so here we are. One last step before we can treat this like any other regular poured foundation. And that is, put on fiberglass mesh here. That's alkali resistant. Okay, nice and simple. That'll bond the two pieces together and help resist cracking over time. Now, let's just talk about the product we're going to use today. And it is a regular parging mix. There's nothing really all that special about it, except you have to understand that it is a Portland cement-based product. It's a non-modified. And in the world of tile and cements and TV, everybody gets confused between modified and non-modified. And modified cements basically means with an acrylic latex kind of adhesive property, and non-modified means good old-fashioned cement. Now, Parging mix is designed to go on a wet surface and retain moisture as long as possible in order to get as hard as possible. So there's two mistakes that happen in the industry on a regular basis. One, guys don't wet the substrate. They won't wet the cement board, they don't wet the foundation at all. They might do a quick sponge just to make it look good, but it has to be soaking wet and holding so much moisture that it's not drying in 5 or 10 minutes. That's the key. Second step is when they're all done, they're supposed to be covering everything up with plastic to create a sunroom, kind of like a sauna effect, so that any of the water that leaves the cement is trapped inside of a mini atmosphere, okay, so that the relative moisture of the air between the plastic and the cement is so high, the cement actually retains the moisture level while it's curing over a week. I know, it's crazy, but if you let that plastic sit there for 3 days, you're gonna have parging that's bonded to the wall and is twice as hard as the crap that you're finding on new homes today. Bottom line, if you call someone to parge your house, they're gonna just come in, get it done, get out, get paid. And next year when it all falls off, I guess you call the same guy again because that's just what we all do, right? Now, if you have a smooth surface, like a USG Durock or a poured foundation, then you're fine. You soak it and you apply one coat. If it's really rough like this, you're gonna need 2 coats. So find something like this, you can really soak that down. You wanna be careful around flashing and metal and stuff like this because it's really sharp, okay? And you're gonna wanna do 2 coats. So we're gonna soak it down, get 1 coat on it, and then I'm gonna use this trowel, the thin side to apply it, and then I'm going to use the grooves to create little ridges so it holds the bond for the next coat even better. And then over here, same thing. Soak down that cement board. I know it seems counterintuitive to soak down something that's designed to keep your house dry. Trust me, you want your cement to bond, it's got to be wet, not just damp. We'll give that a couple minutes and then we'll soak it again. I'm going to warn you, there's no such thing as too wet with cement board. okay? So don't be shy. Make sure that's soaking wet. In order to mix your parging, what you're gonna need is you're gonna need a mixing drill and a concrete bit, something that looks sort of like that. There are options, so don't be too worried about it if yours looks a little different. You're also gonna need a trowel. A great trowel for parging is actually not a cement trowel. It's one of these cheap little tile trowels, 1/4 by 1/4 inch. This gives you the ability to do a scratch coat and then a finish coat, right? It's everything in one. This is why you hold on to your tools when you're done a tile job. You can do your parging next. You're also gonna need a sponge. This is for later. A little corner tool like this for finishing up and detailing your corners. It's a little easier to work with than a big trowel, but if you only have one, get the big one. And then a wooden float. This is another option instead of the sponge. This is kind of like a personal thing. The wooden float's more traditional, but the sponge seems to be more popular. I'll leave it up to you if you want to buy a new tool or reuse an old sponge. Now, this parging mix, it tells you how much mix goes with how much water. Generally, this will do, I think I said 40 square feet, right? Which is a fair amount if you think about it. That's 1 foot high for 40 feet of wall. It's a lot of parging. You can mix it in half a bag at a time. So it'd be 1 gallon of water for a whole bag or a half gallon of water for half a bag. I'm gonna go for the half bag. That feels about right. Remember, always add your cement to your water. That's a little bit loose. That's okay. It's easier to add the cement if you need it. Brilliant. This product operates a lot like tile cement in the fact that you got about an hour to work with, okay? And when it's mixed right, it sets up a little bit stiff like this, which is nice because then you can hold it on a trowel. Kind of a lot like mortar. So I guess I'll start back here with all this mess, okay? And you can just stick it in there. It kind of like patches up all of those big holes. Okay? It's closer to where I'm working. Fill it in with that grooved edge. Okay? And that is how you'll set that up. So the next time you come by, you can finish it nice and smooth, okay? Yeah, you can go over spray foam with anything. No. The other thing you can do with this scratch coat is you can fill all these gaps and set that up so you can add mesh tape into that inside corner afterwards. Our scratch coat is done. Nothing to it. Now we're going to switch it around and we'll do the smooth side. Now, you can put this stuff on up to about 3/8 thick. Remember, the goal isn't to, it's not like drywall taping. You don't put it on then take it off. You want to put it on, press it in, and leave it in place. Okay? You can see how much this kind of completes the look. Remember, I'm working on an 1880 farmhouse here, and I'm transforming this into something that's very new and modern. And if you want to see how we installed the siding on this house, then click the link up here. But this is a complete restoration project. Now, my mix is starting to get just a little bit dry. We'll fix that. Just a little bit of water, and we're gonna work that into the mix now. You also want to keep wetting your cement as you go. tape. Really all we're doing is trying to just get rid of all the warps and the bumps. Okay? The goal is to get it to 3/8 thick and then smooth it out. We can use the trowel to get rid of the bumps. Okay. This wood float looks really nice when you got lots of room. Sponge works amazing in those tight spaces. It just adds a really nice little texture to it. All right. I have about another 120 feet to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just call my son Matt out here to finish off this work. He's young and he's got a strong back and he'll love doing this. But really all we have to do now is just show you how to set up for overnight. Okay? Okay. So this is Super 6 plastic, and if you want, you can cut it down to fit. You can even staple it to a piece of wood, and you can create a little trellis and lay it over top. I just usually stick mine in the corner, grab a couple of pails as I go, and drop them in place so that it holds everything nice and tight. What it does is it gets rid of the wind, the direct sun, and it helps to trap the moisture. And as long as you're doing that, you're gonna have a nice strong bond and you won't have any cracking down the road. Remember, if you're doing parging in your house, make sure it's wet, make sure you're comfortable, make sure you keep your mix really easy to work with, or it's getting too dry, add a little more water. Water is your friend here, not your enemy. And most things in construction, we look at water like our enemy, but when you're parging, it's your friend. Don't be afraid to get soaking wet and have a lot of fun doing it. In this video, I'm going to show you a great system for installing a brand new door in a really old house. Okay, so this is one of the challenges you have when you're dealing with such an old structure. Foundations is settling, there's nothing square or level in a new home. Try 140 years old, like seriously. The goal here is to try to create an area where any moisture that gets in behind the exterior of the building or in behind the framing of the door is going to follow the path of least resistance. So we want to create a path of resistance so that it follows back outside of the building again. And this is where this blue skin product comes in. This is just magic stuff, right? If you haven't seen this before, I'd be surprised. What I'm doing is I'm going to create an area of blue skin inside the building, and it's not going to stick very well with this old wood, but that's going to be fine. Now my goal here is actually to, at a later date, I'm going to pull all the wood off this facade from this row of boards down. And we're going to install cement board, probably 3 layers a 1/2 inch. And we'll bring that right up underneath this blue skin, and then we'll wrap that over top. But if your building is in solid condition, then what you do is you just wrap this over the facade, okay? And that's your exit point. We're going to install this here. This is about the spot where the door closes, where people actually, if they step on the transition, are going to stand on it. And now that we have that done, I'm going to take my last layer. Now, okay, so here we go. Now we've got a membrane. And you're going to see what I'm doing is I'm creating an environment here where the water gets in. It's going to run down. It's going to hit this plate, and instead of coming into the building, because the house is sloped and it's sloped in, it's going to come into this area here and then be directed out. Okay, that is the secret. This is what we call the Jeff approved method. You're not going to find this on a website anywhere in the world. So the other thing you want to do is you want to seal up the side of your house. What I'm going to do is start from the bottom and work my way up. That way I can be confident I have enough to finish the job at the bottom here. And this stuff actually stretches around pretty good. So you can manipulate it and mold it according to what you need. This stuff sticks really good to new wood, not so good to old wood. Just staple the bugger on until you get the time to get the tie bar, and then you can red tape it all in. So now the house is sealed up. Yay. Once we get to the next step, and we'll talk about it when we go do the siding, about finishing the water diversion system, what we want to focus on is down here. When we install our door jamb, right, we're going to be foaming insulation spray all the way down, so water won't go past that. It'll be directed down the front on the inside of this 1x3, and then the only place it'll go is it'll run this way because the building slopes that way, and it'll find the exit here. It's the only option it has. That's why it's going to work so effectively. When we put the door in, we're going to use these cedar shims, and we'll build up this corner to get the level point, and then block a few other points along the way, about every 6 inches. That'll give it some strength. We'll foam that gap. We're good to go. So I'm a little spoiled rotten here today because I got my helper doing all the heavy lifting. But if you don't have somebody to help you, I'm going to show you a little secret. What we do is we attach a 2x4 near the top of the door across the framing opening. Remember, the jamb size on your door is not thicker than your whole wall package. So you can actually set it in place, and then we can put another 2x4 across in front. That allows you to manipulate the door and get it level and square and shimmed and everything just the way you want it. And then you can remove, once you've got it screwed in, then you can remove all this extra framing. Brilliant. So really all you have to do here is set up your level. Once you've got your level established, then it's about making everything flush, as long as the wall is relatively plumb. So we're going to go like this, right off the edge of my frame on the corner here. I'm going to show my laser line. And I'm just going to lift this side with shims underneath the jamb, which is where you need the support, and half of this plate. The reason for that being, you want support both on the jamb that's carrying part of the door and on the plate when people step on it, it transfers down to a frame. And the lever. Put the shims in backwards, the 2 ramps. When I slide them together, it creates a perfect little rectangle and makes the door nice and flat, nice and flush. So all we do now is I hold the bottom shim and I push the top one in while I'm lifting up the weight to make it thicker, and hopefully put this where I want it. Ah, nice. This is just a matter of trial and error. There we go. Nice and plumb. We know that if this door is level here, most likely if that's plumb there, then this is probably level here. Let's throw the cross line laser on. Let's have a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. This is the benefit of having a laser. You can use a level to create plumb as much as you like, but when you're installing a door and you have a laser, you are guaranteed a perfect result every single time. So now that I got my plumb line, I know my door fits the hole, everything's comfortable. I just trace the line where the door is flush. I put this line where that shim goes together. And I know that that combination of shim is the same thickness here as it is here as it is underneath the door. So as long as these 2 lines are at the door and at the other shim, no matter where I put this door in a minute, it's going to be perfect. Okay, so we can get rid of all of this now. And we can remove our extra 2x4 here. So remember, there's a 2x4 keeping the door from falling out on that side. All right, so what you want to do to install your door is open your door up right there. Set it on your 2x4, find another couple pieces of blocks, maybe a few shims, set up a nice line. All right, we'll throw the laser on this. We're just going to throw it on the detail of the door. It's not flush yet. I'm just going to take a couple more shims until it's plumb. In really old houses, getting anything perfectly plumb is tricky. Sometimes the more important issue is flush. Like outside, we really want to have our brick mold flush to the outside of the house. It's not plumb, so our door isn't going to go in perfectly plumb. But at this point, the only issue it has is if it's left open a crack, it might have the tendency to open a little bit more, which is fine. I'd rather live with that and make sure that the outside of this door is completely plumb and flush. Flush gives me waterproof. So if you have to choose between plumb and flush, go with flush every time. Now we're just going to take a few shims. You can see that there's a lot of room to play here. Right from this side all over this side. We want to get these things in here about every 4 inches. So that when anybody steps on this, there's a direct load transfer from this plate into the shim to the wood. And that will keep everything from breaking apart and opening up gaps over time that will cause nasty drafts. There we go. You don't want to lift this, you just want to create contact. It's really easy to over shim, and then you end up creating a bow and then your door won't seal properly. We're not going to foam the bottom until we have the entire door frame screwed in, because if we did cause a bow, we won't know until we go to close the door. So we're going to get the rest of the door installed first, and then we'll come back to it. So the door comes a little package with the missing hinge screws. And the idea here is you put shims in behind these and you use this as your anchoring point. So really the whole goal here is just get the shims in where they're snug, back it up, and then come from this side so that you keep everything square. All right. And before we drive these screws in, we'll throw the laser level on it one more time real quick just to confirm. Whoops. There we go. We want it snug. Remember, if it's not snug, when you drive the screw, it'll pull it in tighter. You'll get a bow. That looks pretty good. I don't know if those screws are long enough, but we'll see. Come on, baby. What we want to do is we want to put a screw on this jamb, but we don't want to put it here where it's visible. We want to bury it where it's not ever going to be covered up. So if you ever have to make adjustments, you have access to it. Remember, as the house moves and breathes and stretches and expands, you might want to make adjustments to your door over time. So what we want to do is pull this out of the way gently. Okay, take your shim and hold it right there. And then take your screw right up against that shim. And then when you release this, it should basically cover everything up. Now, a new door is always going to have a really good seal on the bottom. All right, now you can see what your gap looks like here. So we know how much to manipulate this jamb. So you really want to do 3 locations on your jamb: the bottom, middle, and top. If you need to add another one to get rid of a warp, you can, but let's start with the first 3. Okay. Okay, gap is good, opens up too much, right? Not a problem. What we do is we're just going to back this out and put in another one. There we go. That's the beautiful thing about shims. You can adjust down to a 32nd of an inch with a great deal of confidence. Beautiful. Gap across the top is nice and consistent. Okay, so really now what we have to do is just add our shims to the bottom again. Okay. Put the thick side through. And then I'm just trying to eyeball to put 4 inches under. And then I'm going to come up, meet up. Okay. Woo! The best part of working with new doors is these brick molds. They're designed to follow this little line that's in the trim. There's a little line detail here, and that's where your trim stops and starts. So you have something to measure to. Generally speaking, they come out of the box already pre-cut, perfect height for the door. All you have to do is cut the width. So you can line it up on that line, put your inside corner on that line, and then fire away. Now, because of the age of this house, even though we set it up flush, it only gets so close, right? So what you want to do is be easy on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself if you don't get it perfectly flush. You're gonna put in a piece of poly bead here anyway, or some quad or some sort of exterior caulking before you paint. Okay, that's that side. Let's grab the other side. There we go. Now we measure the top. So measure outside to outside. It's a lot easier to cut on the saw that way. I'm looking at 39 3/4. I think it'll be perfect. Let's go see if we can make a cut. This is pre-made for a 36-inch door. Now 36 is not the most common door size in the world, but I'm using it as a front door. And I'm setting it up so that it's easy to move furniture in and out of the house at a later date. So there's no reason to cut this down. Just all as is. This is going to be absolutely crazy. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Doors trimmed. Crazy. That's awesome. Okay, so last part is the foaming. And of course, I love my gun. This is the kind of thing that every homeowner DIYer should use, because you can stick this in really small spaces. The idea is you don't want to install your foam from here and try to push it to the other side. You'll end up over foaming. And you're not concerned if the foam gets all the way to the other side, because your thermal break on this wall is where the door is. The door is only R5. Nothing you can do about that. You can spend as much money on the door as you want. They're R5. Wood or glass, R5. So you want your insulation to be in line with the thermal break. So what I do is I am on an angle, and I'm just shooting a door and window bead that's going to have some expansion, and I want it to expand towards the front and towards the rear at the same time. And the trigger on this gun gives you an incredible amount of control. To give you an idea, I can really shoot a lot of foam out of this gun in a hurry. Okay? But just a little bit of pressure on that trigger lets you fill the gap at the speed that you're comfortable with. This gets rid of the air gap and the draft. It's not going to give you any structural support. That's what the cedar's for. Okay, don't rely on the foam, because it will not carry the load all by itself. Remember, if you use too much, you can just trim it off later. Now if I need a lot, I can use a lot. This is designed for low expansion. It's not going to cause the door to buckle. Go grab yourself a hot coffee on a day like today and just let it dry. Now, I'm also going to take a ladder and I'm going to shoot up in front, get a good seal there. Whew. Tomorrow's job is I'm going to cut these blocks out and put in a proper header, and then I'll foam that as well. And when you're done, just close the handle, and it seals this up way up here at the top of the shaft. So it's ready to be used again tomorrow. Just make sure you store it upright, or all the gas will leak out and then it won't work. Okay, so the only thing left to do with this door is to install all the hardware. So I went to the store because I need a new lock for my door, which we just installed. And if you didn't see that video, you should watch that when you're done watching this one. Instruction is very important. Before we get going, listen, there are a ton of different lock companies out there, different systems. Yep. And this is French. Here's English. I don't care which one you buy, okay? Read the instructions from front to back before you start. These systems can be tricky, and there's a lot of little hints in here like, do this with the lock open, do this with the lock closed. And if you get it out of order, you're in for a lot of headache, and then you're gonna end up calling this toll-free 1-800 number and spending the rest of your day listening to elevator music, waiting for someone to help you out. So, we're gonna install this one, and the reason I got it is because it's cheap. I love cheap things. I'm a big fan that if I can get something for under $100, there's no reason to spend $250. I like design, but in a house like this is like modern rustic farmhouse, right? It's old. It needs to be brought up to speed, but it doesn't have to be over the top. There's no sense of us spending a lot of money on a lot of things that don't add value to the home. And a lock system is not one of the places I want to spend a lot of money. Let's face it, somebody really wants to come in, I don't care which lock you put on that door, it's coming open. Step 1, safety instructions. And a whole lot of things that if you do, void your warranty. Step 2, tools you need. A screwdriver. Everything else is optional. If your door only has one hole, you're going to need a lot of tools. We'll go through those in the video. If your door already has 2 holes in it, then all you really need is a Phillips, and you can disengage and then reinstall the new one. That would be easier, but I like to do it the hard way. Step 3, drill the hole in the door if you need one. Got it. We need a drill, a 2 1/8 inch hole, and we need to center it on the same one as that hole, and we got to put it a few inches above the other one. Good. Let's do that now. Okay, so here's your template. This line is the edge of the door, so let's get that on the edge of the door. Let's crease it there and find it. Good. And then we just want to pull this down and line up that hole there. Got it. And then, bam. So we're on this center line, which is right here. Okay. That didn't translate very well, but it was right there. Let's just confirm that now. I'm just checking my daylight coming through the hole. Good. And then, good. Alrighty. This is a 2 1/8 Milwaukee bit. It's a lot of fun. Most of these hole saw bits are very smooth on the outside. This one, they actually cut the teeth and they put a little flare on it. Right where you cut is a 32nd of an inch wider than the hole. They flare the teeth out so that when you're drilling through metal, the rest of the bit isn't overheating, causing everything to expand and get locked onto the system. It's really nice. Basically, you can see that my pilot extends about 1/2 inch past my teeth. So we're going to drill for a little bit, and when I see the pilot come from the other side, we'll switch around and finish drilling from the other end. Safety note, when drilling through metal, always wear safety glasses, even if you can't see what you're doing. Here we are. Now, here's a tip of the day. When you reach the metal, put it on reverse and push, and just score it first. Then put it on drive. And that little bit of score there will help keep all the teeth in line exactly where you want them. Woo! It's gonna kick, so make sure you hold tight. Hey. And we're through the other side. When drilling from the other side, I suggest drill left-handed. Here we go. Put it on reverse and just scratch it up real good first. Then go forward. Very important here, let the drill bit do the work, don't push too hard. Very satisfying. So, to mark the center of the hole that drilled on this side, you just put the center mark on this hole, and you'll take your template, you line it up, and mark your center line. Boom, ready to drill. Nice and slow, make sure you get the hole in the center line, and then once you're happy with what you're doing, get committed. Now you'll see that the teeth are going to get clogged up with the wood fiber. Okay, what you do is turn it on reverse. That cleans the teeth. Then you can keep going forward. Whoop. All right, now you can only drill so far at a time. So what you do is you take your screwdriver, put it in the hole, and you pop that core out. And that'll help keep things from overheating on you. And you just do that a few times until you get to the inside of the lock. A little bit of rocking motion helps make that hole just a hair bigger, cuts down on the heat. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Now the cord broke off inside my bit. It's not too hot. Okay. We're gonna just take this off now because we don't want to leave the core in there. There we go. Had I pulled out sooner, that never would have happened. Woo! Smoky! Yeah, no. Just keep on breaking off those pieces. One more time and we're done. Okay. That is the end of that demonstration. So step 4 is all about your hardware. Now it comes ready to go for a pre-mortised door. So this door came off the shelf, it's mortised, we can stick it in, latch plate facing the door so that it closes and it will shut. Nice and simple. The deadbolt, we drilled our own hole and it's sitting proud. And so they also come with the option of a deadbolt installation sleeve. So what we do, we're just going to take our screwdriver, put it in this little slot, give it a twist, and the other side. And then this should just slide down, quarter turn, and I don't know, sometimes they pop off the top, sometimes they pop off the bottom. Looks like it's coming off the bottom. Done. Now, they have the sleeve that's designed for this plate as well. We don't need that. We need this one for the deadbolt, and we will slide it over top. Okay, snaps in place. There's my deadbolt. Now, on the assembly, 2 things to note. One is on the assembly, it has an up sign and an arrow. This varies up when you stick it in the hole, and then you have to set the depth adjustment for standard, which is what we have, not, or the extended one. So what you'll find is when you stick it in the hole, this slot here is right dead center. Okay, so if it's an old door, you're going to want to shorten it. If it's a new door, that'll be standard now. Nice thing to consider that. And we want to just stick that in there. And we want to hammer it with something. Boom, 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 with something. Hey, that's what tape measures are for. Perfect. Okay. Now, to finish the installation of these 2 latches for the traditional plate, screw to install. All right. So the next step is the strike plate. Since we don't have our second hole yet, we need to put our screwdriver in that slot, open this up, and let's mark where that spot is. And the good news for us, we're going to be painting all this later. Here we go. And we want to pick the center line of that, translate that information, make your mark. So this cute little piece of plastic is exactly 1 inch diameter. I like my 1 inch spade bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this on the center hole, drill ourselves a hole, and then insert this in the wood so we can trace out what we need to mortise for our strike plate. So the plastic turns out needs 1 1/8 spade bit, so we're not using plastic. I did just check the door, everything works great. The deadbolt sits perfectly in that hole. So now I'm just going to trace over this as center as I can, and I'm going to have to mortise this out with a chisel. Oh my. Whoopsie. I don't think this is ideal, but if you buy a door off the shelf at your local building store, you're going to find that you too will need to chisel out your own mortise. That's a little aggressive. That's what I want. There we go. Okay. There we are. All right, once you get that chiseled in, it's just a matter of lining up the screws. Remember, always back it up and burn it in before you drive it through. That'll keep it from splitting. Very nice. And here we go. And this is all pre-mortised. Again, can't stress how important it is to drill that backwards first. These plates, your screw is going like 1/4 inch from the hole. Guaranteed to split every time if you don't. Whew. Let's double check one more time. Nice. Oh, I don't have a handle. There we go. Now it's time to put on the outside handles. And they're all screwed together on this plastic little doohickey. I've seen this for a lot of years now. Looks great in the display. None of the screws in this installation to the package are required for installing on the door. So get rid of them as soon as you can, or they will drive you crazy. Make sure you put this in the right hole. There are 2 options. This is preset for the short depth. This is preset for the long depth. Some assemblies you have to adjust them. This one you don't. You just slide it on in. Now, it's impossible to screw together at this point without doing this. So depending on the design style that you get, there is a release pin for these handles, and you can release this and you can change your handle to something more curvy. Or if it's on a left installation and you want to turn it to a right installation, what you need to do is remove both handles from each side and then just switch them around, and they'll just slide back into place and lock in. That's just a little something in case you need to know. All right. For us, our installation is pretty straightforward. We basically want to set the middle of our handle over top of that square, line up the 2 screw holes parallel at 3 and 9 o'clock. Now, when you're putting in your screws, use your fingers, go backwards until you feel it catch, and then run it forward. That'll guarantee you don't strip the threads. It's a great time to remove the handle so that you can do this. Now warning, you don't want to go very fast here, and you don't want to over tighten. Okay? Slide that on. Perfect. Bottom one's done. Okay, so for the locking mechanism, make sure that it's perfectly squared off and it'll drop in and recess. Okay, this pin can be adjusted here. The secret with this system is keep this closed the whole time with this installation, okay? Now you're feeding your wire underneath your lock set, okay? And then you're putting this through the flat part of that bar. Now, you generally don't want to be using the wire as your anchor, so use your left hand to hold this all together. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. You know, you have this plate, and it says here against the door, okay? And so it marked on here real plainly, the cable slides through this little section. That's great, and then that goes over the locking bar. And then there are 2 screw holes here that line up with the front. And these screws, just like in the diagram says, you know, you slide that in, you'll make contact. Again, make sure you're not cross-threading. Tighten these things on with your fingers first. Any screw that you can tighten with your finger is not cross-threaded. That is always a good way to know that you're doing it right. Okay, once we got that all lined up, we tighten in the screws. Nice. Okay, before you tighten it up too hard, open your door, because it's a square plate, and visually get it where you want it. Okay? Now if you mess that step up, you can always adjust the tightness on this later. You don't want to be able to twist that with your fingers after you set that. Now in the instructions, we have to install this electric cable. One side is just pure white, the other side has an orange bar on it, and that orange bar should be visible when you install it right up here, and it's just a plug-and-play system. So it should fit in the hole without too much difficulty. Of course, it's going to be really difficult now because I just said it should be easy. And just to make sure it's installed all the way, I'm just going to take my screwdriver and give it a little bit of upwards pressure. Nothing too major, but I don't want to be yanking on the wire to test. Now, this wire harness is supposed to thread through this little grip right here. Set this horizontally, slide it over top. Okay. And then there are 2 more screws to attach these 2 plates together. These are machine thread, and they don't look like they reach. Oh yeah, they do. There we go. There we go. Okay. All 4 batteries. Let's put them in according to polarity. Okay. And enter the default master code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're waiting for a green light. And there it is. Haha, we got it. All right. And that is that. Wow, that is awesome. So we have keys. Step number 1, 2, and 3, 4 for programming. Keep this paperwork, set up your code. You can have 1 master code and you're allowed 10 other codes. The reason we got this is so that when we're on holidays, we can have our kids come by and take care of our house and our dog. So, there we go. Simple. That was about as simple as it gets. Finally something that worked the first time. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to take an old boring steel door like this and install a brand new window in it. It's really simple and it's going to blow your mind. You can do this project at home. So just full disclosure, the video today is sponsored by no one. That's right, I bought this window to put in my own door myself. That was always the plan. The bottom line is, when I go and buy this steel door, the cost of the door and the cost of the window is still $100 cheaper than if I buy the door with a window in it. I know, and all we do is drill, cut, and screw. These are 3 basic tasks anybody can do at home. I'm going to show you all your options. So, I'm going to unpackage my window and we'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so inside your package when you buy your light, yes, they call it a light even though it's a window, it's door talk, right? Every trade out there has got its own language, and in this language, this is called a light. It's a half light because it fills half the door. And you've got this little group of plastic caps and screws. Because the way it installs from the inside is you screw it together, okay, and then you put the plastic caps on. This is just like a trim, right? That's how it comes together. And so what you do is you cut a hole in the door, you stick this trim together, you screw it together, you throw in these little plastic caps, and you're done. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The most amazing part of this situation, and I'm gonna warn you, you're gonna want to measure this yourself. But here, this is where it gets mind blown. The door is already stamped with the 6-panel design, all right? The measurement for the hole that you want for a half light is from the corner of the stamped down to this corner, and the same on the other side. So they've already stamped the exact location that you want to cut out. I know, it doesn't get any easier. No measuring, no squares, no fancy tools. Just grab a drill with a drill bit that goes through steel and put a hole in all 4 corners. Step 1. Doesn't get any easier than that. What do you think, Max? Pretty simple, huh? All right. But the trim on the window has about a 1/2 inch overhang, mercy all the way around. Nothing to worry about. And the reason I'm wearing gloves is because this is metal. It's a steel door. Step 2 is to cut it with a jigsaw. Not just any blade. Use a metal blade. And metal blades come in metal thin and metal medium. I get the medium. Should be at least a medium thickness gauge door. For peace of mind's sake, is 1.5 inches. Okay? Which means I'm gonna have to probably cut from both sides. It's a shame. Step 3, we're just going to confirm that this thing will fit. Oh yeah, nice. All right, well, this goes from the other side. That's pretty awesome. Right? Don't move. Okay. Whew. Now use the screws that come in the package. You'll notice the tip is cut off, so it acts more like a machine screw, but it connects all of these. Okay, you'll have to excuse me. The gloves were for safety. I'm done cutting metal. Now I need to feel what I'm doing. I can't use gloves when I'm using a drill. So we're going to just insert the screw, make contact. That's it. Nice and gentle. When it starts getting enough resistance that the chuck is slipping over, stop. All right, and then I'm just going to go to all 4 corners first now. There we go. And you'll know you're done because it's a nice tight seal here on and on the door. I know it's almost too ridiculous how easy this is. Now the options that are available, and these are in stock at the local hardware store. You can get this, you can get more of a clear glass, different decorations. They also have it with the blinds are built inside the glass. So they never get dirty, they never get to be cleaned, they never get damaged. That's another option. It's completely personal. But the best thing about this is, my door was $200. My light window was just under $200. And I got to pick the customization right up front, no waiting. If you order a custom door like this, okay, you're 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, and you better like what you find. This way, you can just order a door, get it installed, get on with the rest of your renovation. And when everything is done and you're not making a mess anymore, you can come back and you can decorate. You can even buy this in a full glass. It's the same process. You just drill your other hole down here. Just go to the outside of all the detail and you can cut all that out and you can put in a full glass with a blind. Piece of cake. And if something happens during your renovation, you're only out $150, $200 on a door instead of a huge custom door, right? So when you're renovating, put in a regular steel door. When you're all done, add the glass. The reason they call them a light is because it adds light. It's kind of, it goes without saying. Now, this is really cool. So, there are 2 kinds of caps. I'm going to show you. Okay? There's a regular cap, and it's just flat, and then it ramps up straight. And then there's an inside corner cap. Kind of looks like a tulip. Find your tulips first. Make sure you put them in your inside corner holes. Line them up with the trim. Bam. Done. I know. It's that easy. Not everything in life is designed to be difficult. Customizing a door is definitely a DIY project anybody can do. Now the other step that we're going to do on this video is we're going to show you how to customize the paint on a new steel door, because everybody wants to know how to paint a door. And there is definitely a right way and a wrong way to do it. So as soon as I'm done playing with these caps, we're going to go outside and paint the door for you. We'll go through all the steps. And all you got to do really when you're going to paint a door is make sure that you start bright and early. You've already bought your supplies, you're ready to go. And it's one of those days where it's nice and warm outside without being too humid, because you want to be able to have the door open to dry for about 8 hours after you're done painting. And that is really the secret. Otherwise it ends up, when you close the door for safety, you end up also getting the door stuck to the frame. Very important that you set this project up, install the window on one day, and then paint it on the next. Okay, because this can be done in about 10 minutes. But the painting is going to take about an hour, and then you really want to let it dry. Painting the exterior of the door requires only 3 major things. One, you got to be the right temperature. It's got to be sustainable. Low wind is preferable because you'd be surprised the amount of debris that the wind will blow around. 3, you got to do it with your door open and leave it there to dry for a few hours. And 4th is a basic approach to painting. A light scuff with a sanding block, brush for cutting all your edges, okay, because we're only painting the one surface. So you don't want to just use a roller up against the edge. It always looks like junk. So I'll show you how to cut in the edge and get a nice straight line. And lastly, just a mini roller. Now, we picked this up at the local hardware store out in the country today. Everybody's on lockdown, so it's hard to shop. But thank God they had something. First thing we want to do is loosen the hardware from the back side, just enough so that we can get a brush in underneath and behind it, so we're not sealing it to the door. Because if you ever want to change your hardware in the future, you want to make sure that the door dries thoroughly before you reattach this, or it could peel. That's lots. There we go. Nice. Now, quick sand. Now the plastic edging around the new window we put in doesn't need to be sanded. It'll already accept the paint just fine the way it is. This is just to help create a surface that'll be really good to bond with so that it doesn't rub off when somebody bumps up against it. Important, get all around your locking hardware. This is where people are going to have their keys dangling, hands with their rings. This is the most susceptible area in the whole door. Be very thorough in this area. All right, done. Here we are. Since I'm working with just 1 quart, I'm not going to leave any paint in the can. It's too small to use my brush with. I'm just going to seal this up, save that for reference. Now, the only other rule you need to know is that when you're painting with latex versus oil. So if you're using latex, you always start at the top and work your way down. When you paint with oil, you start at the bottom and you work your way up. That's because oil has this natural tendency to want to droop and sag. So the way you manage how much paint is on the surface is you always brush up until it dries out. Okay, and always lift until your brush dries out. So the next time you grab there, you're pulling extra paint out of the way. Just a little tip for you. But with latex, it pretty much bonds in place and doesn't drip too much, especially with a good quality paint. So there's a couple places we want to cut in against the trim. We're actually going to paint the white of this as well because we aren't going to have any white color on the outside of our house. So I'm actually going to set my brush right there on that edge and paint from inside the bristle. Now, if you want to see how to use a paintbrush properly, we have a video, how to paint. We'll put it in the card right over here, okay? But if you know how to paint with a brush, you'll never have to use tape again. You just set it and forget it. Beautiful. All right, now we're going to take the excess here, and I'm going to run the edge. Now when you paint from inside a brush and you paint over the edge, you'll end up with a nice clean line. All right, one more time. And I'm just gonna fill that in to get rid of drips. Okay, so now we're gonna cut this edge. Now this metal rolls right over to this joint here, and that's where we wanna get our paint to. So we're just gonna first set our paint in the region. Okay, once we establish the line, we'll just pull it straight down. And you can do this 3, 4, 10, 100 times, whatever it takes. It's all about how much paint's in your brush, how many bristles you can get comfortable on that edge. Just roll straight up the side. There we go. Here we are. Get a few bristles around the edge. All right. Okay, now let me just cut this line in here real quick. Okay. So then after you do all your cutting in, you take your roller before the paint dries, and you want to texturize your surface. Okay, remember this is going to all take 2 coats. So if you see little white spots or faded lines, don't be too concerned. All right, now with the roller you can go right to the edge. Just don't use any pressure. Okay, and it's just to create a nice uniform texture. Now remember, All you need to do to paint a door is give it an application, about a half an hour of dry time. You don't need to sand in between coats, but if you take the sanding sponge and hit the main part of the surface real gently, any of the dirt or debris that got caught in the paint while you were doing it will be rubbed off. Give it one more coat and you're finished. All you have to do after that is just sit back and let it dry. Just a quick note, window companies don't like it when you paint their trim. They'll tell you there's no warranty just to protect themselves in case you're using the wrong product. But this is a vinyl, and if you're using a latex paint, it bonds great, it won't cause you any problems. And for the record, a lot of companies, when they're doing colors on the outside of a window, paint their vinyl. So they build the window and then they send it to the paint afterwards. So this is normal practice. So don't be discouraged to do this kind of project if you see on your product literature that the warranty is void if you paint. I'm not saying you should void all your warranties in life, but I'm just saying sometimes they use that as an excuse to not be responsible. When you're rolling around the doors, you want to resist the temptation to put too much paint on. It's better if you can almost see the wall behind, right? Get it rid of the extra off the brush. Always start at the top, roll around, flattening out your brush so that it goes in behind your fixture, okay? If you find yourself with too much paint, just rub it off somewhere and get back to it in a minute. All right. Nice. There we go. That is actually a really good looking area. I know it's a little ugly right now, but trust me, that second coat will fill in all those nooks and crannies. It's going to look perfect. As you can see, fixing up your front door is definitely still an option. If you have something old and boring, you can give it a refresh, right? You can renovate anything and be your own contractor. That is the message here on this channel. So make sure that you like and subscribe this video if you learned something cool today. You don't want to miss the videos that are coming up. And make sure you hit the bell for notifications. It's a really important part so that you don't miss out. We're kicking out almost 2 videos a week now. So we're very, very busy around here and you want to stay with us and be up to date. All right, so now we got those 2 DIY projects out of the way, just for making your house look pretty and ready for sale on the market. Let's jump into something a little bit more meat and bones, right? We're talking about the windows and the siding. Now, if you're gonna do window replacement, there's some amazing secrets in here. This video is gonna give you a process you can follow that's gonna be weatherproof and airtight, and it's going to look amazing. You can do it yourself and save a ton of money. Now, not everybody's going to be installing a window with new construction. So if you're not peeling apart your house and you still want to replace a window, then we got a video. We'll put the link up here in the card and down in the video description. Just go to the bottom screen, click that show more, and all the information about the channels down there, including videos that are related to the information in this one. All right, let's jump into this. Today we are doing a really cool project. We're ripping apart this old bay window and we're going to resize the hole and install a brand new construction window. Now, we've done videos with window installation before, but this is different. This technology allows anybody, even you, to install your own windows and save a ton of money. Today I'm joined with my son Matt and my son Nate. Now, whew, it's a hot one out here, again.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to work. So our first step today is obviously demolition. We got to tear all this apart, but we're going to save you the trouble of watching this long, arduous task. We're just going to do a quick time lapse so you get the flavor of it, and then we're going to jump right in with rebuilding and putting this new window in. So now that we've got the window reframed and installed Tyvek, we're going to show you how to install a window. We've done a window installation before, but this is a completely different install. This time we're using new build construction windows. We're going to go through the technology in a minute, but first I'm going to show you how to prep for installing this kind of window because it's a lot different. We're not using blue skin. We're not taping the Tyvek to the blue skin. It's a much simpler process that I think a lot of homeowners are going to appreciate because this is the program. If you're going to change your windows and your siding together, now you're dealing with new construction technology. It's a lot quicker, it's a better seal, and it's a lot easier to install. All right, so generally what you want to do from the inside is trim all of this Tyvek back flush to the frame. And that seems counterintuitive, but trust me, I'll explain it as I go along. And a little snip here. The idea here is we're going to be installing a window that has 2 elements to the molding on the outside. One, it already has a brick molding because I like the definition of a brick molding. It makes the window a little more beefy, and it doesn't require me to add extra flashing. And on top of that, it also has a nailing flange. So we're gonna bring the camera inside. We'll go over the details of how the window's constructed, but the nailing flange allows us to install the window, have the brick mold, and then the nailing flange below it, so that we can actually install it all, and then cut this Tyvek, tape it to the nailing flange, and now the window becomes part of the water diversion system. It's completely sealed all the way around. That is an awesome, quick, simple way to install the window. So we're gonna just create a couple of big, quick slits here, allow us to peel all this back out of our way. And then we're ready to install our window. First, we'll have to put some scaffolding up because this sucker is 8 feet wide and it is really heavy. So we're gonna build a scaffolding platform so we can work with relative ease to install it. So we're gonna open up the window here real quick, have a look at the technology. All right. So what you can see here is I have the window. This is what's called brick mold. It's part of the extrusion, and then I have a nailing flange. So the window itself is here, but look at, I'm dealing with about 2 inches of overhang, which is this nailing flange, all right? So what happens is as long as you frame the hole for your window, or you order the window, this is the measurement you're gonna use. You wanna get the width to this point, and the height to this point, and then allow all this extra material and build out to go over top of your wall. So if your hole is, let's call 8 feet by 4 feet, you order the window 1/2 inch shorter on each dimension. So you got a little wiggle room, you can add some foam, all right? And allow all of this build out to go over top of the wall on the outside. Now we're gonna carry this outside, get it up on the scaffolding, and we're gonna show you how to install it and seal it up and do all that yourself. So then you can have a perfect window install with new window build out material. It's totally different than if you're installing inside of brick or existing siding, because then you've got to get your brick mold dimension absolutely perfect to slide it into what's existing. But if you're starting over again like this and doing the whole house, piece of cake and a lot cheaper. Keep it coming. Okay. Now we're just throwing in a couple of shims so we can create an airspace so we can seal it with the expansion foam. Nice. So all we did was we lifted it into place, used a couple of shims to lift it off the support. So now we have a gap that we can use the expansion foam that'll help kill the sound and the air transfer and give it a good thermal seal. That's it from the inside. Now we're gonna finish up outside. So now sometimes DIY means calling over a friend or two or grabbing your kids. Huh. But the reality is once you got it in place and you've got it leveled, with just a few shims, we're going to just screw the 4 corners of the flange. That'll leave these guys so they can take off because they're done for the day. It's been a long, hot day. And then I'm going to show you how to seal this thing all up. Okay, that's the bottom only. So let me get 2 in the top, guys. Done. Thanks, boys. Thanks for a great day.
Hey.
You guys rock. All right. Now, I used the flooring screws, just a few of them to hold this in place. But the nailing flange is exactly that. It's a flange designed for nailing. What you should be using here, and if you have a new house that has a flat wall, you're in luck. This old farmhouse has got a bit of a bow going on, but you can actually put in nails in a nailing flange. You want to be careful, and you want to be hitting with the heel end of the nail of the hammer, and aim for the far side of the nail, and hammer like that. So you got control over it, okay? And you want to throw in 1 nail, I would suggest every second hole. All right? If you're not comfortable with that, then get a screw that has a larger head, okay? But the idea, having it flat's important because when you add your J-trim for the siding around it, you don't want to have a great big fat screw head sitting there. It'll disrupt everything. Now, at this point, a lot of you are like, whoa, what happened? Didn't you do a video, you use blue skin and everything else? I'm like, yes. But the truth of it is this. The blue skin is really important if you don't have a nailing flange, and if you're not going to tie your house wrap to the side of the window, because this is actually waterproof, right? It's not vapor proof, but it's waterproof. And so if we attach this properly, we can create a waterproof seal around this window. We don't have to worry about water getting in behind it. So we don't have to protect the wood framing. And that saves a lot of time and money. So what I do is I take this extra piece here now, and I'm gonna just score it. All right? It's almost like a pencil. You see that line? And what I do is I score it, and then I'm gonna trim it back an additional 1/2 inch, because now I've got that line I can follow. Okay? And now I'm going to tape the Tyvek to the flange. Here we go. Get my mark, extend my blade, plus 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. And it's just designed, what I'm talking about is trimming off enough that I can make positive contact with the tape on both the Tyvek and the window. I'll show that to you now. Remember, when you cut, always fold your tape over so that you can find it easy. Just to save your bacon, especially if you're on a ladder. Nobody's got time for finding the end of a roll in that situation. So all I gotta do here is just take a few minutes, do all 4 sides, tape up all the joints. I don't know, if you haven't seen the video, or your window isn't gonna be new construction, you're installing an existing siding, existing brick, then we can click the link up here. We've got the other video. We'll show you how to install that style of window. It's totally different. But all that blue skin technology is very important if you're in a situation where you don't think you're going to be able to have this kind of a house wrap continuous seal to divert the water around. This type of window, the new construction window, honestly, it is the best option, okay? It gives you a perfect waterproof seal. It gives you the best protection, and it's so easy to install having that nailing flange there. I don't have to drill holes on the inside of my interior to set this window in place. I don't have those little plastic caps. No fooling around. Absolutely brilliant. And just a thought, if you're going to be doing a major project like doing all your siding and windows, consider renting scaffolding and using this kind of a situation. This will save you a ton of time. It's only a couple $100 a month. We got a link to the video over here to show you how to assemble this situation, because you can do this right or you can do this wrong. Don't recommend doing it wrong. This would be one scary thing to be stepping off of. Now, there's 3 steps left to do in the window. One of them is to add your J-trim for your siding. But you see, there's something going on in this corner here. It doesn't allow me to keep the J-trim nice and tight. See the gap? It's nice and tight otherwise. What it is at the factory, when they're putting these together, they're actually melting it together with the heat. So they get a ridge, okay? So what I do is I like to take my knife and I cut that plastic ridge off. Okay? There we go. Because this is a painted window, it's not molded with the color. So you might get a little bit of an exposed corner here. It doesn't matter, that corner is it's still weatherproof. Okay? And if you want to, there we go. Let me show you this now. Nice and tight. Solves that problem. So you don't got a big ugly gap. If you want to, after you're all done, you can add caulking if you really want to. You can take 2 seconds and shoot it with some brown spray paint if you really want to. You can spend an extra $1,000 and buy your window from a company that makes this out of a molded colored plastic. But I'm saying, for what it's worth right there, not worth it. Better to have that nice and tight. Okay, there we go. Life is good. Of course, installing J-trim is really easy, right? It comes with a nail strip, just like the window. Right? And this flange is actually sticking out a little further than the flange on the window. So you aren't going to be nailing in the nails. You don't have to worry about it. So the last thing we have to do outside is put on what I call my metal drip edge, my flashing. And that's just for those really crazy wind-driven days, we're going to take a total measurement of the outside plus the material here, so 92 5/8, and I'm going to add 2 inches because that's how wide the J-trim is, and I want this metal flashing wider than both pieces of that, okay? All right, the idea is to have this sticking out.
Sorry, is to have this sticking out?
1 inch further on each side.
Sorry, just say the idea is to have this sticking
The idea is to have it sticking out 1 inch past the corner. That's right there. And we're just going to hammer a few of these in. All right, that's how we're going to install that. And this gives you ultimate protection in the most severe weather. Ow. And I know this might seem overkill, but whenever you're waterproofing things, it's a great time for overkill. Here we go. Boom. Tape that membrane to the metal so that no water can get in behind it. Now this blue tuck tape is actually an advancement in the technology. Used to be red. It was the gold standard for years until somebody invented something that's even better in wet areas. So now we're all using the blue. It costs the same and it is twice the performance long term in an area like this. So now the only thing that's left is to install all your J-trim, cut it and fit it. That is a beautiful finished look. And you have twice the protection because now you're going to have the siding to protect the house. You're going to have the tape onto the flashing protecting the house. And underneath that, you've got the house wrap taped to the nailing flange itself, which is unibody construction because it's joined with heat. So it melts all the joints. There's no way for water to get through that. I don't care if you were blasting that sucker with a fire hose for like 4 days. Not a drop is coming into that building. And you can see one of the most significant differences between new construction windows and replacement windows is that if this was a replacement window, I wouldn't have a flange outside. So I'd have to attach the window from in here, which means I'd be screwing through the jam material of some sort. That's just gonna look like junk. It makes a mess. New windows, you don't have that problem. All you gotta do is come inside and foam it in. And if you don't have one of these foam guns, you gotta get one. You can go to check out our tools in the description below. Go to Amazon and buy one. You'll thank me for it. These things are awesome. Here we go, nice and controlled. The only thing left to do is tell you that the way we finish this window is a combination of a window jamb extension and a casing. We got a video on that. We'll throw the card up there for that one. Has some great information. It also was done in a more traditional style, so it's got some real good carpentry tricks in that one. And if after watching something like this you think, wow, that's not so tricky, I could install windows. Now maybe an 8x4 foot is a little bit bigger than the average person wants to bite off for the first time around, but if you do your average window, you can do it by yourself on a step ladder. It's not that tricky. And you can save thousands of dollars, make your house worth a lot more money. It's a brilliant idea, and if you think that that is true and that you can do it yourself, then hit the like button down. Send us a signal that this is kind of information that's making a difference in your world. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. All right, so now that we've got the DIYs out of the way, we're jumping into the major projects, right? These are the kind of projects that can take you weeks to complete, but have incredible resale value available to you. So if you're gonna be tackling a project like this, you can change all your windows and all your siding. We've got all the steps for the entire system so you can get a great result when you're finished. So in this video, we're gonna show you how to install vinyl siding. But not just that, we're gonna show you how to go from a nasty beast like this to something that's beautiful. So if you're like me and you're fixing up an old house, vinyl siding is really kind of a labor of love. Step number one, you've got to remove everything right back to the original skin of the house. That means whether it's OSB or original wood siding, that's where you start, especially with older homes. People love to put layer on layer on layer on the outside of a house, but it really has very little value. Why build your house all the way out here when the cold's coming in from way down here? So we want to take it all the way back so that we can guaranteed the integrity of our water diversion system, which is what siding is a part of. It's not the total answer. So if you're going to go do a siding job, don't just stick it on whatever's there. Peel it all back, get rid of the garbage, start fresh. That way you can be sure that you're going to be able to control the air and the moisture and the rodents and have a successful finish. So in our plan, we're going to remove this door because we added another door around the corner. This is the windy side of the house. And so by changing the entrance to the other side, it'll save a lot of money on heating costs. So just so you know, we're going to have to frame this up, close it up, and extend the skin, make it nice and flush. This old window here, we have to remove all this frame as well, and then reframe it inside the existing wall so we can finish off with our skin flush with the original wood. It'll take a little extra work, but it's gonna be so worth it. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. That's good for the soul. Woo. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the material that I'm using to sheathe over the hole, added it to my lumber for my backing. So now that I've screwed it on, I can just move this around until this is nice and flush with the surface that I'm gonna be putting my house wrap over, and then I can screw it in. And this is a process you can use. So now I can come back when I'm all done framing this hole out, and I can attach my sheathing right to this board, knowing it's gonna be perfectly flush with the rest of the building. That's money in the bank. So you might be asking yourself, why are you doing all of this on a video of how to do vinyl siding? Well, the reality is there's a lot of people in a lot of different kind of homes. So if we start from the beginning on the worst possible scenario, then everybody has the answer to their question. So one of the benefits, or should I say drawbacks of balloon frame construction, is every time somebody takes a window from here and covers it up and puts a window in over there and then covers it up and puts another window over here, they keep cutting through the vertical supports of the house. So from here all the way over, all these supports have been cut through and replaced with just little bits of pieces of framing. Now, this wall is actually starting to bow outwards. So that's a really good thing for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the inside, get some 6-inch structural screws, go right through the side of my staircase and pull it all back tight together. I'm glad I found this when I did. At least I can fix it. So when you're dealing with a situation like this, you're looking for two things. One, you want to create a surface, a nailing surface for your new skin on the building to go flush. The second is you want to have some structure in the wall so that you can insulate properly. So as you can see, we're going to just put a couple of horizontal pieces in here that we can put a bat of insulation in each one of those little segments. That'll hold it all together while we put the skin on. It's easier for us to go horizontal here because there's actually wood in the wall for us to attach to. The top and the bottom don't have a lot of integrity left. All right, so now we've got the wall framed up and bat insulation. I've also used a little bit of spray foam in all the corners and the little weird spots just to make sure I got a good seal. So we're gonna finish tearing all this out, remove the door, and then it'll be time for step 2, which is to reframe and then to skin all of the holes. Now, I got a quick question for you. We're gonna be going back with a vinyl siding. There's a lot of products on the market now. You can go with a cement fiberboard with a good vinyl. You can also go with wood siding. It's a board and batten look. So I just wanted to know, put in the comment section below what you think would be your favorite on an old house like this and why. Let's have that conversation because I think it'll be really good for a lot of people to hear about the differences. We just got a little bit of cleaning up the corner to do and we're gonna remove the door. So really that should be as simple as just taking out the hinges. You know, don't get all dramatic with the sledgehammer. Start at the bottom, work the way to the top. The last screw will hold, the door will swing, the weight will sit on that corner on the floor. Nice and simple. Look at that. Mm-hmm. Ah, security screws. Okay, so in a lot of cases, if you're changing out a door or you're removing one, it's still in good enough shape that it gives you a little fight. So what we usually do is take the reciprocator, the Sawzall, and we'll just cut through a jamb. That gives you, and then you can just fold it open. It's really easy to remove. In this case, this has been here weathering for long enough, it all rotted out of the bottom, so there's nothing here to fight back. We're just gonna pry it off. There we go. Not sure why they needed 2 different screws, but well, the rain's coming. Looks like I got about 20 minutes. So forgive me if I lose the tutorial. Just work like the wind. Even when you're in a hurry, you gotta make sure it's right. Here we go. So the goal here is to get this closed up before the rain on the horizon comes. The secret to this is really just get the sheathing on. We want to intentionally measure just a little bit shy, fill the perimeter with some expansion foam, trim it off as we're putting on the Tyvek wrap, and then we should be okay. Hi. One of the suggestions I'm going to make if you're a DIYer, bite off as much as you can chew for a day. I would say that 16 or 18 feet by 10 feet high is a good goal if you're opening up an old pig like this. If this was a newer house, feel free to take the whole wall. You can do a re in one day, pretty much the whole surface up to 200 square feet. One of the easiest ways to measure and mark, use a drywall T-square with a black marker. This will enable you to draw a nice straight line really quickly. Much faster than using a chalk line. Make sure to set the depth of your blade relative to the material you're cutting. And you can cut on the ground if you put a 2x4 down first. Just stay on the short side to hold the cutoff in the air. Framing's done. So what we're doing now is adding a bead of expansion foam, because old houses, new wood, sheathing, nothing's going to close up nice, and you want a nice air barrier. So this is a great time to guarantee that an expansion foam will fill all those gaps. So this is just for good measure. Not something you do in a new house, but when you're old and new like this combined, man, it is just nice to put that extra 5 minutes into the project. Make sure that everything is sealed up nice and tight. Cool thing about this gun is the cans that twist on top, although they look the same size as the single use, they actually hold 5 times as much material. Great value for your buck. So if you're doing a lot of renovating, get one of these guns. They're about $40. And they will pay off in all kinds of ways. There we go. Sometimes the most important parts of the house are ones you don't see. Don't be afraid to get on your hands and knees and really make sure things are sealed up right. Okay, here we go. Now we have a great opportunity. Take a few minutes, pull the rest of the nails out of the siding. It's original. While that sets up, and then we'll come back with a knife, trim it off, and we're ready to tie par. Step number 3 is to weatherproof the building, not waterproof. Now this is really interesting because there's a lot of conflicting information out there and people using the wrong terms. When you're putting a Tyvek or a Ty-Par or an exterior barrier on the house, most cases it's a perforated kind of plastic paper. The goal of this paper is not to waterproof your exterior of the house like a membrane you'd roll on in a shower. This goal is to weatherproof. Now it goes behind the physical barrier of the rain, the sleet, the hail, which would be your siding. And what it is, it's designed temporarily during construction to keep the structure dry, but it's designed long-term to keep the wind-driving rains from penetrating through the paper into the house building. Now, the bottom line is, it's not a waterproofing barrier, it's part of the water diversion system. Hell, even the roof isn't a waterproofing system, it's a water diversion system. If If you live in the north, you'd know you get ice buildup. That ice goes crawling up underneath behind the shingles. It will penetrate the roof when it thaws. It's not waterproof. It's only designed to shed water off the building if it continues to travel in the right direction. Same thing with this material. If the wind drives the rain up in behind the siding somehow, that will help it to be deflected down the wall and then out at the bottom. So, when you're hearing and you're thinking about waterproofing versus water deflection versus water diversion systems, the reality is this. We're not trying to waterproof the house. We're trying to weatherproof the house. If the structure behind all of this system gets a little damp on occasion due to extreme weather, that's okay. It will dissipate and dry out and everything will be fine. I'm liking this right here. If you want to really stretch that out, go like 4 or 5 feet or something. We'll see how that works. Okay, that's good. I'm liking that. Okay. All right. Very good. 1 second. Let me catch up here. Just be careful you're not hitting the wall too hard with the machine. You don't want to break the paper. You just want to embed a staple. All right. Now on the paper itself are these little red squares. Generally that's a guide to help people understand how many staples should be on the wall. So it's every couple of feet. They want it every 8 inches. If you're like most people in the world, you'll end up putting a lot more than that in your tie bar. And it's an OCD kind of situation. I want to go about 6 inches past the corner. Now, depending on the environment that you're working in, first of all, there is nothing wrong with having overlap on this kind of material. This is not a vapor barrier, all right? This does not stop moisture vapor from passing through. So if you overlap, it's not going to cause you problems. But we wanted to have a little bit extra to come around the corner, just so that when we do the other side, we have a nice, easy seal. We're not relying on the tape at the corner to do our seal for us. We're just setting this up so when the rains come tonight, we're going to have some water shedding ability. So anybody who's a fan of the channel and saw our little video about the mice control, you've seen the exterior of this house. Here's another example of a hole by our friendly neighborhood critters. What we have to do is create a water diversion system on this old pig. So we're going to skin the entire wall, new OSB. We're just adding a little bit of back framing, okay? Covering it all with the Typar or Tyvek. Any house wrap will do. Some is better than the others. I'm not going to get into the debate. The point is, these systems are all the same. They keep the water from getting in behind and they shed it down, all right? But they allow moisture or air vapor to pass through it. So it's an awesome technology. We're going to cover all this up. We're going to tape your joints. We're going to get down to here. Now, in this corner, I've got 2 different foundations. Over here, I've got a stacked stone, and the house is actually built right on top of it and extends just a little bit past the stone. Over here, I've got a 2-foot wide stone foundation. It's basically 2 walls of stacked stone set up against each other. And so this one, we have to create a water diversion system that gets in behind the Tyvek with metal, bent some metal out and over and around, and we also want to seal all this up with our expansion foam. Now this is important. We talked earlier about these old houses. The stone wall is not actually attached to the rest of the construction. It's balloon frame. Everything is sitting on the floor joists, and it acts independently in a lot of cases. So when you get to here, you want to use a little bit of this foam all across the joint. And you want to make sure that your OSB doesn't come in contact with your stone because you don't want it to wick up the water. And right here, Max, there's a huge gap here. We want to be sure to fill that gap with the expansion foam, especially tight there. Now I'm going to foam the rest of this, and then we'll show you the next part of the diversion system, which is our flashing. Now we've got our metal that we have bent. Now here we go. We're going to just set this in position right into the foam. Okay. Now Matt, what we're looking at is this point right here. That we want to have down, and then just throw some surface nails.
Am I pushing right down into the corner?
Generally speaking, yes. We got our peak is here, right?
So I'll leave it.
So it doesn't need to be too hard. No one's going to be standing on it, but that's fine. So the idea here is you want to measure out all three of these sides, take those dimensions, draw a picture of the piece of metal that you need bent, and you should be able to find a local supplier in your neighborhood. In Ottawa, we have the vinyl aluminum warehouse on Merivale Road, and you can take it in there and tell them how many feet, what color metal, and they'll bend it for you in just a couple hours. So you can head out in the morning, give them your dimensions, pay for your supplies. So if you need custom built metal and you don't have a bender and you don't want to rent the machine, that is definitely an option. It's affordable considering how convenient it is. This is really starting to look bad. So my favorite system for putting in a nail is to hold the nail in between your fingers, all right? Not with your fingers. This way, in between your fingers. Put the nail where you need it, put your fingers up against the board, and that'll keep the tip still, and then you can give it a good whack. And then if you drive too hard, you're hitting the soft tissue of your hand that isn't going to get bruised and dented or injured. All right? That way you can give it a good shot, you can penetrate the steel. You're not hitting it hard enough.
Boom.
So here, we can show you another trick. When you're sitting down like that, you've got to hold the nail on an angle, so just about a 5 degree. Okay. Not bad for a guy who only does this once every 5 years. Eh?
Oh, I mean, when you're I guess when you were my age, you guys didn't have air nailers, eh?
No, we all had to know how to use skills. No, wait. You need an angle here.
There's my angle.
There's your angle. Now hit the damn thing. There you go. Now you are a freaking nailing machine. Loving it. So now that we have that in place, the diversion system will work like this. Now, on this side, we're going to fold this over, trim back a little bit of this, tape it to the metal. I like to have a nice seal right to my waterproof system, which is the aluminum. Over here, we're doing a little different. We're going to install our starter strip, okay, at the same height as the other side, and we'll have our paper extending past it, and then afterwards, we're going to cut our cement board underneath the paper, install it up against the wood, and that'll give us our vinyl siding. Will finish looking something like this, okay, over top of the cement board, and then we're going to be able to come along later and parge this and integrate that parging right into the stone all around the house. It's a lot of work, but getting an old 1880s house to look like a new house takes a lot of work. All right, so let's get this down here first, and then we can get on with getting our starter strip installed. Here we go. Now we're using tuck tape. Make sure that everything is nice and tight here. Tape it to the back of the wall so that when you're finished, you aren't going to see it. All right, important to integrate one side to the next. If you don't have anything that'll do that, then just use a little bit of tape. It's funny because you'll always have damage caused your building where your weak spot is. So if you've got a weak spot in your tie par or your Tyvek, make sure you fix it. So now it's time to install your vinyl. Now we've got our water diversion system set up. We have to now figure out where we're going to start. In most cases, homes are already built pretty level. So if you're putting vinyl on a newer build, you won't have a problem. On an old house like this though, everything is sunk and moved around over time. So you need to establish where the most critical point is that you need to have the finished product established. And that's generally the front door. Okay, so where your front door is, which is right here, is where you want to establish your full pieces. okay, so that when your siding is installed, it looks very intentional. Now, everything from this point under is going to be cement board and parging, so that is a natural transition, and that is why we want to have this hanging down just a little bit past the cement board. In this case, the cement board comes up to here, and that is going to work perfectly, okay? So we have a product called J-Trim, and this is like the workhorse of a vinyl siding system. This can go on the sides, across the top, underneath things, wrap your windows, your doors. You can put it up against your soffit so that your siding can finish up inside of it, and it'll hold everything together. It's a decorative detail trim that does all of the work on any of your vertical or horizontal surfaces. So the way you install your J-Trim, and I'm going to give you a little secret here because this can be really quite tricky. It has to be nailed, and these nailing flanges come already spaced out. And you don't need a nail in every one of these gaps, okay? It's just on a cutting wheel at the factory. Usually you'll find that every 12 to 16 inches is more than enough. And because these things all expand and contract, you want to have your nail sort of in the middle, okay? So get your nail going. Now, in order to drive that nail deep, if you're good with a hammer, you can just line up and whack it. But if you're not, you're going to hit the vinyl and you're going to break your trim. That's expensive. So if you set up your hammer, put the butt of your hammer on the wall, and you hold it on the wall and give it a swing, you'll be able to knock it in without damaging your trim. Here we go. Put it up, back it off, give it a good shot. Nice and simple. That is a great way for someone who's not comfortable with a hammer to be able to install this trim. Of course, if you are comfortable with it, you want to just give it a couple of shots, you're okay. Now, this gap that's left here, we're going to use a polyurethane caulking to seal this up. It'll bond the brick mold to the siding trim, and it'll guarantee that weather's probably 5 to 10 years, depending on the sun and the heat conditions. Okay, so the other two major trim pieces that you're going to need on a job is an inside corner for such situations like this. Right, so make sure you have your house wrap going all the way around, and you can install that one and nail it in the corner as well. And then you have the outside corner, same thing. It has a nailing flange on each side, and that'll sit on the outside corner, and it has a really nice deep groove here to receive the siding, okay? So all of these components should be installed, but before you can do it, you've got to level off your starting strip, especially in an old house, okay? It's kind of like tiling. You want to map everything out first and make sure you got a good solid plan. Putting this in position and nailing it all in and not knowing where your starting strip is can be a real hazard, because if it's too low, it looks stupid. You want to cut it off. It's hard to do that nice. If it's too high, then you're going to look really stupid because you're going to have a huge gap missing at the corner. So let's get the laser level out, and we were going to mark off our laser line first so that we can install our starter strip and know exactly where all these components go. What I've done is I've set up my laser level with a nice horizontal line, and this is my starting strip. And the idea here is this gets nailed to the wall, this flange piece sticks out, and your siding, your first piece, will get clipped onto there, and then you nail that in. And all this piece does is it establishes a nice level line, okay? So this will go in here to the top of my mark, and I can install this strip. It goes inside my trims, and then when the siding goes on, clip, good to go. So if you take out a laser line and you make your mark on your wall, quick little line like this where your marks are, then you can easily nail these in place. You do this all around the property, and we'll just reposition this over and over and over again and continue this line right to the outside corner, and then we'll have everything mapped out and we'll be ready to roll. So my starting strip is actually going to be lower than the inside corner. So my inside corner, if I wanted to make it look really pretty, I want to make a little modification to it. Okay, so here's my inside corner. And I've got two different diversion systems meeting up in that corner. I don't have a metal flange coming out to overlap that I can caulk, so my inside corner is actually the weak spot in the house. So if you can think about it, the siding system takes the initial part of the rainstorm, collects it, it can travel to the side. This corner actually keeps all that water from going behind and sends it straight down right to my weak spot. This is my challenge. So what I want to do is actually take some J-Trim and combine it with the inside corner to create a diversion so it has a place to run out. So what I'm going to do is I am going to modify this for the angle. This is going to be a little strange. I don't even know how to explain all this, but I want this part to go in behind, inside the trim here, inside my trim edge, okay? I want this part to go in behind the corner, and I want to create a system here. All right, now I can just throw a little bit of this on here, and I can make my outside corner nice and secure. Okay, that's gonna work good. So I'll just demonstrate it here before I stick it on. So now my inside corner is gonna go in behind it and up inside of it, okay, into the corner. So now any water that comes down the inside trough will head into this, which is gonna be on an angle, following my detail, and then be able to run away from the building. Bit of a pain in the butt, but it's gonna work really nice. So let's measure this off now, because I'm going from the outside corner. I don't want this detail any longer than it needs to be. We'll match that angle. By the way, if you're gonna work with this kind of stuff, you need a good pair of white snips. There's a few different models out there. I like these because they keep my hands away from it. They're very good for metal too. All right, now we've got our system. Whew, all that's left for me to do now is to nail this bad boy in place. Okay, Maddie, you're up. I'm gonna hold on my system together while you nail it, okay? No, anywhere up here is fine. Thank you, we're good. So, now we're gonna just finish and nailing in both sides of this trim. There we go. We have our level line. We got our corner. We got our starting strip. That's making positive contact in the corner. You want to make sure you leave lots of room for your siding to install without any difficulty. Here we go.
Should I be tossing one through this hole to catch both pieces here or no?
Nope, not necessary. Just every 16 inches. There's going to be a fair amount of pressure put on this as we're tugging it all together, so we want to have it nice and tight. So we're using a Gentex siding here, and we're in Canada. They have a parent company down in the States. They make the same product and available distribution down there. We'll put all of those details in the description down below. The products and the corners and all that kind of stuff. So this is awesome. This color is Meadow Fern. It's relatively new on the market. So this is really nice because it has one of those modern colors, and in conjunction with the commercial brown trim, doors, windows, and soffit, I'm gonna end up with a more modern looking house, hopefully. It won't look like it's 140, 50 years old anymore. Now, when you're cutting this stuff to measure, the goal is actually, boom, done. The goal in the summertime when you're cutting is to cut it pretty much from the full interior to the full interior, okay? Now vinyl siding has this really awesome ability to expand and contract a lot. So in the wintertime, it's gonna shrink, probably over 12 feet, between 1/2 and 1 inch. I know it seems like a lot. So if we use the 1/2 inch rule as the rule, and we put our nail in their siding, there's two things you need to know. One, in the summertime, install snug. If you're doing this in the spring or the fall, leave a little bit of gap, okay? You're going 1/4 inch on each side, because it is gonna get hot and it'll expand. If you're installing this in the winter, just stop and wait until next spring. It's just too difficult to work with. Put your nail in the middle of these gaps. What I'm about to show you here is the most important rule when you're installing siding, and nobody ever does it, which is why every time you drive down the road and you look at a new house construction, you see an absolute mess of warped walls. You put your nail in the middle, and you don't attach it too snug, okay? Leave the ability for that siding to maneuver. If you hammer that all the way flat, Let me do an example here of how not to do it. Okay? How not to do it 101. You put it on an edge and you hammer it in nice and tight. And then you go down here and you put another one in and all right. What you got here is a nail on one side of the gap and a nail on the other side of the gap. They're both pinched tight. This siding can't move. In the summertime, the only thing it can do is buckle in between the nails. All right? That's not how you want to put this stuff on. In the extreme weather, you want your siding to be able to slide across the nail. Here, I'll use this again, because that one's in there pretty good because it's hot today. You want to install your siding in the middle of all your gaps so it can move around. So as it's expanding and contracting, it can slide on the nails, okay, and sit freely without all the buckling. If you install it this way, it's not coming off the wall, all right? It's not going anywhere. It's just as secure as if you hammer it all the way in. And you can find that sweet spot where it can still slide, okay? That's the trick. Every nail goes in the middle of a gap and you don't hammer it all the way in, then this has the ability to expand and contract without buckling on the wall. And you're gonna be really happy with your result. So for everybody who bought a house and is disappointed with the way their siding is performing, go out and buy yourself a siding removing tool, and it's a little red hook, goes underneath. Lift it up and check to see, are your nails all pinned in nice and tight? Are they stuck in the corners so that the siding can't move around? And if that's causing your buckling, that's an improper installation, and the guys who installed it are gonna be bound by warranty to come and fix it. Now, we want to put in a nail every 16 inches. So if you're doing a house like we did around the front and we add strapping, put your strapping every 16 inches. Very important, this is evenly spaced. If you don't want to have a measuring tape out and waste your time with all that, just count out 10 spaces and throw in a nail. Okay? And be nice, leave that gap. This goes on relatively quick. Boom. Time for the next piece. So one of the most important aspects of the siding is the way that the nailing strip and the siding itself have got this detailed notch. It's on both ends of every piece. When you're measuring to do your cuts, always measure from the detail, okay, over to where your gap is. So most measuring tapes will fit inside of the J-trim, and you'll measure right all the way over there. This is 26 1/4 to this detail. And then when you're measuring your piece of siding, measure from the detail, 26 1/4. Bum, bum, bum. Make my mark. All right, now, if you want to be just kind to yourself, you can take 1/8 of an inch off. Guaranteed that everything's going to fit without any issues. That is very cool. Okay, so for cutting vinyl siding, the best system that I've ever come across is just get a 12-inch square. This is wider than this material. So you can take that little notch that you made, and you can just throw a quick line on your siding, okay? Now you know where your cut line is, and of course your angle grinder. And we've tried chop saws, sliding saws, different kinds of snips, but nothing beats the speed of an angle grinder. And done. And yeah, I didn't use safety glasses because there's nothing flying around. The grinder is more melting the plastic, not cutting it. It's quite interesting. So now you can see that when I cut this, I have this awesome overlap. Okay? I have 1.5 inches on this side and 1.5 inches on the back side. That's my waterproofing layer. All right? Now the only question you have left is, do I install left to right or right to left? Because it goes either way. And that's up to you, okay? Generally speaking, you want to take a look at your wind pattern and your rain pattern. If the wind is always driving from this direction, then install from right to left so that your overlap is the other direction. Okay? Make sense? Really, it comes up to you have the option, so you can set it up for the wind from the back side or from the front side. It's your call. But if you have a 3-inch overlap like this, generally speaking, you're going to be fine. This is one of the reasons why we have a water diversion system behind siding. Siding stops 90% of the water. But when the wind's blowing, it's going to get in behind it. That's why you need this functioning. That's why your details and how it ties together with all your deflection system is so important. Do not cut corners on there just because no one's going to see it. This works great. This will keep your house from rotting. Okay? Now, what we got here is we just got to cut the rest of this all the way up to the top of the door, and we have nothing new to show you for the next few minutes. So one of the other benefits of leaving your nails raised a little bit is if you make a mistake, you can pull your siding off with relative ease. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but the bottom here never clipped. See? There, now it's snapped in. Whew, glad I caught that now. Fixing that later on would have been a real pain. So, always put your finger underneath the edge. I'm so busy teaching, I forget some of the simple stuff sometimes. Right? Lift while you nail, just a little bit upwards pressure. Make sure that everything is nice and snug. Okay, back to the time lapse. So we figured we'd just take a quick minute out to discuss these installation blocks. They are awesome. When they're closed, they're the same thickness of the finished siding. And they just have a little compression locking system on them. And then there's a front face that comes off. Okay, so you save this for later. But the idea here is you can take these blocks for installing around dryer exhausts, hose bibs, lighting fixtures, anything you can imagine, really. I mean, there's a lot of options in the different sizes you can get, but generally you can't buy these in a variety of colors at your local building store. You've got to go to a specialty store to get them. So make sure you pop by a siding supplier and you can get whatever you need. Now, I ordered these in advance and I ordered them black. And it might look like an odd choice, but I also have, because I like to always buy things before I start, I have my light fixture. And I noticed that when I bought my light fixture, the back here, the mounting plate was not just a little round. It is a massive, detailed shape, and I needed a large rectangle so that when I mounted it on there, you can see that that's going to look rather sexy. Okay, so the secret here is mount your box right in the middle. Okay, and I have lots of position to do that. So then I'm going to take this here and I'm going to roughmate where that is. I'm going to trace out my line a little bit with my pencil. There we go. That's all I need to know. Time to cut the hole with the grinder. Now the idea here is this rectangle is much bigger than I need. I only need to expose the pan box. So what I want to have is I want a nice rigid overlap. This is a stronger product than the siding itself. So this is why it's a mounting block. I can attach a fixture to this, screw it to my mounting plate attached to the wall, and put all the compression strength I want on the surface of this, as long as I don't cut the hole too big. So, it's just like cutting tile, right? We're all done. Hoorah. when I go and I stick my plate over top of that and I mount it to the wall, you'll see nothing is showing. I can even finish off there with a little bit of a black polyurethane caulking, make sure everything will be perfect. Now we chose that light actually because we did a poll and we asked everybody if they thought rustic or modern. So we got a bit of both. It's a bit of an antique style, but we're going with LED lighting. It has a really cool blown air bubble in the glass feature, so it'll give us some really cool light. If you remember way back to the beginning, I did a video on installing these light fixtures, bringing the power out here. We have got both of these boxes leveled off. And so if I install the siding level and I install the boxes level and I install these level, all in the same line, we should have a pretty sexy looking exterior of the house here. Okay, so what I want is right there. And for good measure, as the older I get, the less I trust my eyes. Yeah, good reason too. Look at that. I was way out. Okay. There we go. Throw a couple more in for good measure, and we're good. Now the light fixture itself is going to be attached to the box, okay, with longer screws. We're going to pick up some 832s and we're going to screw it to the box itself. But if this mounting box is attached securely to the wall, then your fixture is attached securely to the box, which is attached to the wall, and then you caulk it, it's not going to fall apart and crack and leak on you, and everything will last for a bazillion years. Done. Let's go cut the siding for this piece, and then we can put the trim on. Okay, so here's the trick. Max wanted to know if there's a trick for this, and there is. Lay it in front, and you just see in your line here, and you're gonna just, right where the middle is, and you're gonna draw this a little bit wider than the box. That's the box there. You wanna add an extra eighth to it, okay? The finish trim has a detail on the inside, and this piece right here should get pushed all the way in past the siding to the box itself, okay? So if you cut it too tight, you're going to restrict this and it's going to sit proud. So make sure you cut just a little bit wider. Trust the 3/4 inch trim here to cover the gap and make it look pretty. And then start over here. Okay, and you can double check your measurements down here like this. Eyeball it. It's just like doing tile. All right, snap that in. You've got these details in the profile here. So I'm going about a ½ inch below that ridge. Okay, so that's my cut line here. And I'm going about, set my finger here with my pencil, and I'm gonna scribe over, boom. That's where I'm gonna cut. When you're measuring something like this, if you're not comfortable with it, you can always use a measuring tape. All right, and it's always better to cut it a little bit smaller than you want. That way you can make minor adjustments after the fact, no problem at all. So I made my marks with a pencil. I'm gonna cut inside the pencil on purpose, just so I have flexibility. All right, now I'm gonna go back there with my marker and we'll double check. Now, here we go. That's awesome. Well, that's actually going to be behind the trim this time. And this is permanent marker, so be careful. All right, so I'm not high enough. So my side here is good. And I can meet the middle good. So I just want to come there. There we go. Heard a lot of people over the years say measure twice and cut once. Truth is, when you're on a job and you don't have a comfort factor or you're doing something for the first time, cut twice. Cut small the first time, confirm exactly what you're doing, and then cut it right the second time. Safer. So before you nail this in, put your finish trim on, confirm everything is good. Oh yeah, that is sexy. Loving it. We're just going to discuss here because the tops of doors and windows are probably the most important part of any of these installations. You've got a couple of options here. One, remember we've got a house wrap on here. This is a nice little membrane all around the whole interior of the door frame. In behind the brick molding, we've got expansion foam that's sealed up everything. If water gets in behind here, okay, it's going to have access to the wood jamb unpainted, the door jamb unpainted, and that's not a good thing. So we don't want to continue building with this idea that, well, if water gets behind it, no big deal, because we've got this, we've got... All these layers are to complement each other. They're not individual systems. So we have our tie part coming over top of this, all right? And we have a couple of options. One of the traditional options is to put on a piece of metal trim, okay? And the idea would be to have this metal trim come down, just like we did on the concrete, on the foundation. Comes down over the top and then a little bit of an overhang. Now, if you do that, you want to bring that all the way out to the outside of your J-trim, or you've created a weak spot on both sides, the water will run left and right and have the same problem all over again. The question is, what's a good system for diverting water? And the answer is to seal it the hell up, okay? I'm going to show you how to use this regular J-trim here now to seal this up and create a perfect water diversion, all right, a perfect water diversion that is going to leave your door completely dry. Now, step one, and I don't know if anybody in the world agrees with my idea here, but I've been doing this for a long time and I absolutely love it, is I cut my paper about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch above my joint here. Oh, having a sharp knife would be very beneficial. Come on. Whew. Yeah, for anyone who thinks that's just paper, forget it. That's seriously woven plastic or nylon. I don't know what it is, but that stuff works. Secondly, grab your J-trim. Measure from the outside corner to the outside corner. Mark it and then cut it. Now here's the secret. If you snip 3/4 of an inch off the bottom, on both sides, and then you bend them down, you create a perfect catch for the other trim. There we go. And there we go. Okay. Now we're going to nail that onto the wall. Lay the paper inside. Let's just think about water. It's windy, it gets in behind the siding, it's running down this paper, okay? And then it hits that trough. It has to go left or right. It'll go over, behind this, and all the way down. All we have to do to help make sure that everything goes where it's supposed to go is get our tuck tape in behind here, right to that corner, and tape that on the 45. Oh, we got torn paper there. We should fix that while we're at it. Now, this is the kind of stuff that you're not going to see on a job site. Nobody's taking this kind of attention to detail. The truth is, most homes, if they have a few weak spots, are going to survive just fine without being this concerned about issues like this. But when you're working on your own house and you've got the luxury to be a little picky, I say, take the extra minute. Because having issues like this dealt with is the difference between ants nesting in your wall because you've got a wet spot and they've decided to make a home there, right? I mean, your house isn't going to fall down. But if you can help to avoid having problems with ants, that's worth the investment there alone. All right, now, believe this or not, I'm gonna just take a little bit of tape on the inside and tape that round joint together to close my gap. So here's how you measure this, okay? Get it all the way to the left, take your pencil, mark right here, 1/2 inch to 3/4 in. So now we're taking where we know our joint is, we're gonna just translate this information to here. Okay, so we're gonna be cutting up. Piece of cake, isn't it? And now we're going to measure from the bottom of this to the bottom of this, and then add 1/8 of an inch, and here's why. This sits underneath this, you gotta include the material thickness, okay? So we're actually 3 1/8 here, so we're gonna cut at 3 1/4. We're gonna turn this around, measure up and cut at 3 1/4. That's here. Put that line there. And then we'll do the same on the other side in case it's a little bit different. It might be a hair different. Yeah, that one's 3 1/2. Not a big surprise. Now because we've got 3/4 of an inch here of mercy, we always add a little bit more when we're cutting, just to make room for things to go nice and snug. I'll go back to the table and we'll cut that out. For the record, 2 sawhorses, a couple of 2x4s, and a 1/2 sheet of OSB makes a perfect work table for this. So don't be afraid to invest in some materials. You don't want to be doing this all day long, sitting, squatting on the ground. Here we go. That one's taller to shorter, right? So we're going to scribe. I'm going to start like this, and I'm just going to slowly close my gap. And that takes a little bit of experience, but hey. Gotta be able to do something once in a while that makes people go, "Oh, Max?" I think the pizza's here, which is why I can't find my son. Must be lunchtime. All right. Now, you're gonna find that if you start up top, there we go, that's all good, that's all good. We're gonna slowly slide it down, okay? That puts you in control. And then you can push it lower than you need it. Get it underneath your edge. All right, this way nothing is gonna fall and break and bend in half because it's all in the track system. Okay, there we go. Now, make sure that we snapped it all in place. So we're just gonna recap real quick. We showed you how to go around doors. Windows are exactly the same. The only difference is you do all 4 sides, okay? And the truth is, you can extend a little bit past the bottom on a window, and you can cut your J-trim on a 45-degree angle just to give it another overlap there. Sometimes it looks bad, but usually on windows it's a good look. Outside corners, inside corners, how to measure. Always measure, we're going left to right from your detail, not from your trim, or not from the edge. That will help make sure that everything gets fit with an overlap. And then when you get to the top, you're gonna need more J-trim, same material. Put it all across your soffit, okay? The last piece of siding most likely is not gonna fit in perfectly, just like this, all right? You're gonna have to cut it at some point. So the detail, you can see, is wide and then narrow. If you go to the end, it's narrow. If you cut it in the middle, it's gonna be thin, and then it's gonna slap around a little bit, all right? So what you do is, if you're gonna cut it, cut your detail off, all right? And then nail this upside down against your J-trim. So I'm just gonna pretend I've got, this is my ceiling height, and I'm gonna install this real quick just to show you a little trick. Unfortunately for us, we have weather moving in, so we don't have enough time to finish the whole project, so I'm gonna show you how we do it. So if your trim is finishing at your ceiling like this, it's fine, it's not too bad. If it's finishing like this, there's a lot of movement. You run the risk of this actually popping out in the bad windstorm. So what you can do is, because in order to have this cut, you've got to cut this piece off, right? Take the cutoff piece, invert it, and then nail this in the wall. then when you snap this in, okay, it's not going to be wibbling around because you've now filled that gap with material. Piece of cake. It's the offcut, just stick it in behind. And then you're going to be nice and solid. It'll look great. It'll have a nice contact versus that huge shadow, right? Nobody wants the shadow. So if you do have to cut it and you're installing it on the thin side, take this off, invert it, just run it with the grinder, invert it, nail it up, boom. How sexy is that? All right, now listen, if you're doing these kind of DIY projects at home and you're feeling confident because of the videos are helping you and you're not exactly sure if you're gonna be able to tackle it, yes, you can, all right? And if you need extra help, then just hit the join button, become a member. You're gonna get access to call me on the phone. We can do consultation. We'll give you an email where you can send us pictures. We're here to help you out, okay? And if you want to get more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, all right? YouTube needs to know that you guys like watching this kind of stuff, and they'll promote it to a bigger audience, and we'll be able to help more people. Today, I'm here to share with you a tool that costs less than 10 bucks that can save your bacon, literally. Got behind me a vinyl siding job, and vinyl siding is really good product. It's very versatile, handles all weather climate, right? But it has one weakness. Because it's vinyl, in the cold weather especially, it's really susceptible to breaking. And how I know this is because here in Canada, every kid in the house and every street is playing hockey in their driveway and shooting pucks up against this stuff when they miss the net. What happens inevitably is every one of you needs to go out and buy this. This little gizmo is from Crescent Tools, okay? And we've done a lot of work with Crescent Tools over the last couple of years, showing you some of their greatest little inventions, and this is one of them. It's called a siding removal tool, and I'm going to demonstrate this tool for you real quick, and then I'll jump into why it works, how it works, and when it might be valuable for you to have this kind of knowledge handy, because I've used a tool like this in so many different renovation situations, and it has literally saved me tens of thousands of dollars. Not a bad return for only 10 bucks. Let's just jump into this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on a piece of siding. Now let's say it's damaged, okay? Or let's say you installed a siding with your son and he didn't put all the nails in that he was supposed to. Yeah, we've all had different experiences. Or you've got a really bad windstorm and some of your siding pieces have been pulled off and you just want to reinstate a few of them, but it's in the middle of the wall. This is where this tool comes in handy. It's designed so that you reach up underneath of the joint, you can grab onto that product and you can pull it loose. And you just put it in behind, slide it in both directions, and it's disengaged. Okay? Now look at, from here, if I had siding where we missed some nails, I could just chuck those nails in, no problem. If this one was damaged, I could use the tool underneath, I could pull that seam, remove the nails, and pull the whole piece out. And then reinstall that piece. And all you need to do when you're done is put it back together. So you use the tool, and you grab the edge again, and you pull it down and you push it in, all right? And all you do is you can run the tool along and push in behind it. Oh, let me just start from here. Okay? And then you lock it back in place, just like when you're installing it. So in just a couple of minutes, you can open up your siding and do an investigation, check to see if you have leaks or water damage. You can investigate if you just bought a brand new house, find out if it has a house rep. That's a real quick, easy thing to do. The other thing is, siding always comes with a stamp on the back, has a code, product color. You can always do quick Google research. If you need to find replacements and you don't have any, see where the manufacturers are in town, call them up to see if you can get any matching samples. And you can replace damaged siding and maintain your building without having to redo the whole side. Now, I mentioned before, there's a lot of different applications for that tool. One is this. I've been in applications, situations where somebody renovated a bathroom and they put the water lines on the wrong side of the vapor barrier, and so the water lines froze in the wintertime. They finished the entire remodel of a custom shower just to find out that they couldn't use their bathroom. That was maddening customer. Wasn't my customer, it was somebody else's customer. But I got the job to go in there and fix it. So instead of going through and ripping out the whole custom bathroom, which was really well done, they had a great tile setter, I went to the outside of their house and took off their siding, opened up the wall and fixed it in reverse order from the outside. So, this little tool here didn't just get me a good job, It saved that client from the expense of ripping out a $30,000 bathroom and starting over. 10 bucks. Sometimes knowing the right tool for the job is worth its weight in gold. So this little siding removal tool, you can get it from Amazon. You can use our link below, help support our channel when you shop there. But I'm telling you right now, having that kind of knowledge so that you have options in your toolbox is worth more than the toolbox itself. All right, so now it's time to get the roof project out of the way. Now, it doesn't really matter who you are or where you live. Everybody needs to know what it takes to replace a roof at some point in your home's history, unless you keep moving just before you have to replace it. But what we did is we went with an architectural shingle. It's kind of new technology. It's got a whole system attached to it. So we made this video so that you can know when you hire somebody what process they need to be following to help protect you from shoddy contractors, because there's still a couple out there. All right, but if you want to research the technology behind the install, then you can click the link up here, check out the video description. We have an interview with the guy who runs the company, and he has all the technical expertise to share with you so you can make a good decision. Because if you're like me, we were kind of on the fence between this kind of roof or going all metal. And that can be a tough decision, so that information is available to help you make yours. All right, let's just jump into the install. And you can watch these guys. They're a crazy bunch of crew, but they had a lot of fun, and the roof is working great. Well, today we are actually renovating the roof. That's right, it's roof day. For everybody who's been asking about a video on how to do your roofing, it's today. Now, I'm not a roofing expert. I don't like roofing. It's a lot of really hard work, and to be honest with you, I'm getting to that age where if I fell off a roof now, it'd probably be catastrophic. So, I did the smart thing. Sometimes DIY is knowing when to make a phone call. So today I've got a crew out here. We're gonna go through the entire roofing process, the materials that we need, because we're out in the country. It is super windy, and in the winter time here, the shingles take a beating. So we are going with a brand new architectural shingle. Okay, we've upped the game from the old 3-tab. We've got underlayments and water membranes. There's a whole lot of technology going on the roof nowadays. We found a great price. We're gonna go through all of the information so that you know what to expect when you're getting your quote and how to get it done right. So in the video today, we're not just gonna talk about the steps to doing a roof, but also how to engage in your contract, okay? Key elements here. Whatever's written down is what you can expect them to do. Outside of that, you can't expect anything. It's not a level playing field in the roofing business. Now, got a contract with these guys to put a system together, which is the architectural shingle system from GAF. And so there's all these components that work together. Make sure in your contract you got all your details. Step one on the workday is to actually set up the site, to put out tarps to protect your ground. What they're trying to do here is when they're doing the removal, they want to capture all of the debris on that surface so that the ground isn't covered in roofing nails when they're done. At the end of the day, it's their job to make sure that the site is safe. So they also put up the plywood to protect your hedges and your shrubs. A lot of care is taken from a good roofing company, all right? And so you want to make sure you put that in your contract, what their plans for site protection and management of your grass is. It's a big key. So the first thing these guys got to do is put life and limb on the line to get to the peak of the roof. Now that's a pretty steep roof. It's a 45 degrees. It's a 12-12 pitch. So when they run up there, they got to be real careful not to slide off. Now they're sitting up there, they're putting their bracket, their anchor in the top of the roof. They can tie off their ropes and use their harnesses for the rest of the day. It's just about getting through the first 5 minutes. After that, it's pretty safe. So let's just put something in perspective here. This is a crew of 4 guys who do this for a living, who've got the right equipment. Almost an hour later, they're still working on removing the first side. Part of this is because of the slope. They got to wire the gear. Now, if you're going to try this at home as a DIYer, first thing you got to do is buy your harness. Make sure you got all that gear. There's no way you'd be able to walk up and down on that roof. If this was a normal 412 pitch, right, they'd have the whole roof empty by now in 1 hour. But because of the situation they're working with, they're going to be here for almost 3 days. It's one thing to consider if you're looking at buying a property that you're going to renovate. Check out the roof line. I got 4 quotes on this house that was $12,000 to $20,000 for the same product to be installed in this roof. Telling you right now, if this was a regular 412 pitch, I could have had it done for 6 or 7. But that's the cost of doing business. Step 2 is the ice and water shield. And that is about a 4-foot wide panel that goes all the way across the bottom. Should also cover all of your valleys, okay? Anywhere where your roof is changing pitch or direction or coming to an end, you need to have your ice and water shield on there. And that protects you against ice in the wintertime, basically is what it's for. When you get a freeze-thaw cycle, the ice will actually crawl up underneath the shingles and then penetrate your roof. That keeps you safe. So in recent years, we've been changing technology on a roof to move more from a water diversion system to more components of a waterproofing system. Still today, you can opt out. If you want, you can get ice and water shield on the entire roof. There are other synthetic membranes you can add, but the reality is this: the roof is really designed to take the water and divert it off the building. That's it. Now, in different climates, we have different needs. So up here in the north, especially on the side facing the sun, we're going to have different times of the year where it'll be freezing at night, and then it'll warm up during the day, and we'll end up with an ice dam at the bottom of the roof. This happens a lot, especially in an old house like this, because we don't have any fresh air in the soffit. Ice damming is really, really common. And that means that there's 2 or 3 feet of ice, and then it melts, and then it freezes and crawls underneath your shingles. And if you don't have something under the shingles to take that water and keep it from penetrating your roof, it's like not having a roof at all. Step 3 is the starter strip. It's just a really thick, durable, wind-resistant layer all around your edging to help make sure that you don't get lift in the high winds. Step 4 is the next layer, which is the finished layer. It's the shingles. Now there's lots of details and a few other things we're going to talk about as part of the whole system, but the shingle is basically the last layer, and he's putting those on now. He's just using an automatic pneumatic nailer. It's a pretty basic, simple job. Their job really is to find a line and stick to it. A little bit of experience goes a long way here. I know it looks a little sketchy, but the reality is, that's the job. All right, so step 5 of any roof is the synthetic membrane. And the reason for that is, again, we're moving from just diversion into waterproofing. Okay, so by adding the synthetic membrane, they're adding another layer of protection in case the original diversion system fails, a wind-driven rain and that sort of thing. And on top of that, if you're a good professional roofer, you always make sure at least that membrane is on at the end of the day, because that alone acts as a water diversion system and it'll protect the house in case you get a freak storm. Now today, the weather report says no chance of rain, but it's also very humid. So that means it could rain. One other thing you've got to remember, these guys know what they're doing. They've been trained to work the system, okay? So GAF warranty comes as a system is done right. So they know how many nails per square foot, per linear foot, what kind of fastener they're supposed to be using. Every detail is part of the work order and is itemized on the contract so that you can make sure that you're checking off that every one of those products is being used in the correct order when they're working on your roof. That gives you peace of mind. Some roofing companies are going to come along and they're going to sell you from $12,000 to $20,000 for the same roof because they're going to call what they're calling bells and whistles. They're going to throw in a little extras. It's not really necessary. And paying for peace of mind when you're buying a roof, $8,000 because you don't know the system, or watch a video like this and pay $12,000. I'll let you be the judge. Now that was the easiest project I've ever done in my entire life, because all I did was make a phone call. Listen, sometimes DIY is knowing your limitations. I can't stand getting on a steep ladder, especially in the blaring hot sun. That's not my cup of tea anymore. So I made the call, I hired a roofing company. Now the truth is if you're gonna be updating the outside of your house, don't stop at just the roof. Change the siding, change your windows, do your doors over again, your soffit, your fascia, new eaves trough. Just do it all as one great big package, all right? Listen, if you learned anything today and that was helpful, then hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we've got a lot of other improvements on this project coming your way and you don't want to miss them out. Remember, we're going to teach you all of the best ways to get return on your investment when you're renovating your property. Well, there you have it. That's all the information for some major projects that you can do on the outside of your house this year. Now, we also have other projects, right? So check the video description because you can do patios, you can do decks, you can do 3-season rooms, you can build a shed. All of those links will be down below. But if you'd like to learn more about the specific situation dealing with COVID this year and the supply chain and what projects you might have planned for inside, should I or shouldn't I be doing a kitchen or a bathroom this year? Are there other options? What are the ones that are going to be the least stressful? We have a live show where I covered all of this information, okay? So we'll put the link up here. You can go and watch that video right now. Be informed, okay? Because it's going to be an interesting year.